In the realm of international politics, few relationships have undergone such a dramatic transformation from cooperation to confrontation as that between former French President Nicolas Sarkozy and Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Sarkozy, a relatively new leader at the time, appeared poised to elevate France's standing on the global stage. Gaddafi, an enigmatic figure, had been a persistent challenge to Western democracies for over 3 decades. This relationship initially appeared to be a pragmatic alliance, grounded in mutual benefits and the potential for strengthened French-North African relations. However, this seemingly strategic partnership quickly unraveled, descending into a scandal of monumental proportions. The subsequent allegations and accusations severely tarnished the reputations of both leaders. Gaddafi met his demise following one of the most controversial interventions in modern history, while Sarkozy became a pariah in Western political circles. The fallout from their tumultuous association has left an indelible mark on their legacies. How did this alliance deteriorate so dramatically in less than 5 years? And why does the story continue to reverberate across political landscapes in France, Libya, and beyond? To grasp the full scope of the scandal and its lasting impact, it's essential to begin with Gaddafi himself, his rise to power, his vision for Libya, and the long, complicated history between his government and France. Gaddafi's rise to power in Libya was influenced by the nation's colonial history, marked by Italian and British rule until 1947. The colonial era left Libya divided and underdeveloped, leading to social and economic disparities. Despite gaining independence in 1951, political power remained with a Western-aligned elite, exacerbating regional and social divides. Born in 1942, Gaddafi emerged as a key figure in response to this political instability. Educated at the Royal Military Academy in Benghazi, Libya, he and other military members formed the Free Officers Movement in 1961 to overthrow the monarchy and establish a more egalitarian society. By the late 1960s, Gaddafi and his supporters criticized the ruling elite as corrupt and out of touch, gaining support throughout the country. In 1969, Gaddafi led a coup against the monarchy, led by King Idris, swiftly taking control of government and military institutions. He abolished the monarchy and declared himself leader of the Libyan Arab Republic. Combining tenets of Arab nationalism, Islamic theology, and socialism, Gaddafi initially aimed for egalitarian reforms, including agrarian land redistribution and fair oil wealth distribution. He also focused on improving education and healthcare. The new government under Muammar Gaddafi in Libya adopted the guiding principles of freedom, socialism, and unity. Under Gaddafi's rule, Libya emphasized citizen participation through people's committees and maintained military control at the upper levels. Socialism was pursued using oil revenues for infrastructure and industrialization, while unity efforts focused on Arab and Islamic alliances across the Middle East and Africa. Despite his rhetoric of socialism and direct democracy, his rule was heavily criticized due to allegations of widespread human rights abuses, including the suppression of political dissent, torture, and extrajudicial killings. His rule was also criticized by many for its authoritarian nature, concentrating power in Gaddafi's hands and undermining democratic institutions. Gaddafi's foreign policy of, quote, neither East nor West, opposed both communism and Western capitalism. He backed Muslim movements against perceived reactionary regimes, leading to accusations of supporting terrorist groups like the Popular Front for the Liberation of Oman, the Moro National Liberation Front, and the Irish Republican Army, as well as funding the Palestine Liberation Organization. These actions reflected his anti-colonial and anti-Western stance.
He's an egomaniac who would trigger World War III to make the headlines. He's the world's principal terrorist and trainer of terrorists. And he's the protector of the likes of Idi Amin. And he's dangerous to Egypt, to Israel. And he's dangerous to peace.
From the start of his rule, Gaddafi clashed with Western states and corporations due to his nationalization of Libya's oil industry and the establishment of the National Oil Corporation. Libya's tensions with France and Western states began to heighten in the 1970s due to Libya's support of the aforementioned anti-Western movements. In particular, in 1976, Gaddafi's military became embroiled in the Chadian Civil War, providing funding and support to insurgents fighting against the French-backed government. The annexation of the Aouzou Strip, a territory claimed by Libya due to historical colonial disputes, became a contentious issue that prompted French intervention in support of the Chadian government. France, under President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, also made indirect attempts to destabilize and remove Gaddafi, leveraging neighboring forces from Egypt, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia during the Chadian War. However, these efforts proved unsuccessful, prompting President François Mitterrand in 1981 to shift to a strategy of imposing harsh economic sanctions instead. In January 1986, the United States imposed additional sanctions on Libya, including a total ban on direct import and export trade, commercial contracts, and travel-related activities. In addition, Libyan government assets in the United States were frozen, which were followed by similar actions taken by European countries. The primary catalyst for these sanctions was the bombing of La Belle Discothèque in Berlin, resulting in the death of 2 American servicemen. The US government attributed this act of terrorism to Libya and believed Gaddafi to be the mastermind behind it.
On April 5th, in West Berlin, a terrorist bomb exploded in a nightclub frequented by American servicemen. Sergeant Kenneth Ford and a young Turkish woman were killed, and 230 others were wounded, among them some 50 American military personnel. This monstrous brutality is but the latest act in Colonel Gaddafi's reign of terror. The evidence is now conclusive that the terrorist bombing of La Belle Discothèque was planned and executed under the direct orders of the Libyan regime.
That same year, the United States conducted airstrikes on Libya in response to targeted attacks on US military officers worldwide. Despite the tragic death of Gaddafi's infant daughter, the airstrikes failed to achieve the goal of overthrowing his government. Libya under Gaddafi also faced allegations of involvement in various violent incidents, including high-profile assassinations and bombings, such as Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988, and UTA Flight 772 over Niger in 1989. In 1992, the UN Security Council imposed sanctions on Libya for refusing to extradite suspects linked to the Lockerbie bombing, which killed 270 people. These sanctions aimed to pressure Libya into cooperating with the investigation and bringing the perpetrators to justice. Throughout this period, Gaddafi worked to grow his influence in the Arab world, looking to develop an Arab federation, which ultimately didn't work out due to the many different domestic and political issues in their own states. Similarly, he tried to establish deeper relationships and tried to unite African states. Both attempts succeeded only in further entrenching the international perception of Gaddafi as an unruly and possibly unstable leader whose power needed to be curtailed.
I find he's not only a barbarian, but he's flaky.
After years of international isolation, Gaddafi sought to improve relations with the West and took steps towards resolving the Lockerbie bombing case. In 1999, Libya handed over the suspects for trial and accepted responsibility for the attack. As a result, the United Nations lifted the sanctions, and Libya was finally removed from the United States' list of state sponsors of terrorism and was allowed to re-establish diplomatic and economic ties with other countries. Not too long after these developments would Gaddafi meet the man who would years later call for his demise. Born in 1955 to an aristocratic Hungarian and Greek family, Nicolas Sarkozy identified with right-wing politics from a young age. He began his political career as a city councillor of Neuilly-sur-Seine, a Paris suburb, and in 1977 became the youngest mayor of the city, one of France's most affluent areas. Sarkozy quickly ascended in politics, serving as a member of the French National Assembly for the Rassemblement pour la République, a conservative party. He held several ministerial positions, including Minister of the Budget and Minister of Communication, before becoming Minister of the Interior under Jacques Chirac. He served in this role from 2002 to 2004, and again from 2005 to 2007. In 2005, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of Muammar Gaddafi, collaborated with Ziad Takieddine, a Lebanese-French businessman and arms broker, to arrange a meeting between his father and the ambitious French Interior Minister Nicolas Sarkozy. The meeting, which took place during Sarkozy's visit to Tripoli on October 6, 2005, attracted significant public attention. While officially focused on illegal migration and counterterrorism, discussions primarily revolved around potential future cooperation between France and Libya. In a private exchange between Sarkozy and Gaddafi, optimism was expressed about resolving long-standing discord between the two nations by the end of the day. About 2 years later, in 2007, Nicolas Sarkozy announced his candidacy for the French presidential elections in May of that year, aiming to succeed Jacques Chirac. His right-wing platform emphasized human rights and a refusal to compromise with corrupt dictators. After a close election victory, Sarkozy declared his intention to establish a Mediterranean Union to connect Europe and Africa. He sought a strong North African ally, and Gaddafi's congratulatory call after Sarkozy's election hinted at Libya's potential role. Sarkozy's first major success as president came when he negotiated the release of 5 Bulgarian nurses who had been unjustly imprisoned and tortured in Libya for years. While European Union representatives were involved, Sarkozy received credit for securing their freedom. Part of the agreement included an invitation for Gaddafi to visit France, a request raised by Gaddafi during the negotiations. Despite some disagreements, particularly over a clause regarding France's defense of Libya in case of external attack, the nurses were released. A French government plane, accompanied by France's First Lady, brought them home. The release of the nurses symbolized the evolving landscape in Libya and highlighted the diplomatic prowess of French foreign affairs under Sarkozy. The next day, Sarkozy made a second official visit to Tripoli, with a lucrative arms deal high on the agenda. The visit was crucial for Libya, as French influence could impact Gaddafi's African ambitions. Sarkozy's friendly demeanor and the signing of over a dozen agreements, including arms sales and an internet surveillance system, aimed to strengthen the relationship between the two nations. However, when Sarkozy later broached his Mediterranean Union aspirations, Gaddafi was unresponsive, shifting the conversation to other potential French sales to Libya. It became clear that their interests were diverging. Sarkozy aimed to unite the Mediterranean, while Gaddafi focused on uniting African nations.
La très contestée visite d'État du colonel Gaddafi en France a débuté cet après-midi. Une grande limousine.
Several months later, on the International Day of Human Rights, Muammar Gaddafi made his first official visit to a Western country. This controversial trip marked the end of the leader's honeymoon phase and foreshadowed a troubled future relationship. The day before Gaddafi's arrival, France's Secretary of State for Human Rights warned in Le Parisien, "Colonel Gaddafi must understand that our country is not a doormat for a leader, terrorist or not, to wipe the blood of his crimes off his feet." With Gaddafi's tent set up outside the Élysée Palace at the Hôtel de Marigny, the visit seemed doomed from the start. Negotiating business deals with Gaddafi was driven by international diplomacy and financial gain. During the visit, the two governments signed numerous agreements worth over 10 billion euros, including contracts for Airbus planes, nuclear power, and $5.86 billion in French military equipment. Additionally, a memorandum of cooperation was signed, with Libya committing to exclusive negotiations with France for equipment acquisition, translating into billions of euros and numerous jobs in France. Initially planned for 3 days, the trip extended to a week. The French government supported Gaddafi's eagerness to explore the sites he had read about in his youth by arranging security details and arranging various excursions around the capital. However, these outings sparked protests, particularly from families of UTA flight bombing victims. Sarkozy emphasized that while securing contracts was vital, human rights remained a crucial focus in his discussions with Gaddafi. The honeymoon phase ended definitively when Gaddafi, without informing French authorities, organized a meeting at UNESCO in Paris. There, he accused Europeans of mistreating African immigrants, responding to critiques of his human rights record. He censured European nations for hypocrisy, telling African immigrants, quote, "Either you live respected here in Europe with the same rights as Europeans, or you return to Africa." His remarks displeased his French hosts, prompting Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner to call the situation, quote, pitfall. President Sarkozy, responding to public outrage, insisted he had firmly addressed human rights records with Gaddafi. However, Gaddafi denied any such conversation occurred, feeling betrayed by Sarkozy. The leaders were later seen standing side by side without even a glance at each other, signaling the end of their once promising relationship. On February 15, 2011, following uprisings in Egypt and Tunisia, the people of Benghazi, Libya, protested the arrest of human rights lawyer Fethi Tarbal. Within days, these protests became a full-blown rebellion, escalating into violent clashes between rebels and government forces. On February 22nd, Gaddafi delivered an angry speech calling for the end of the uprising. 2 days later, in Turkey, Nicolas Sarkozy stated, quote, "Mr. Gaddafi must leave." On February 27th, he declared that, quote, "The French have a duty to react to the situation in Libya." As Western countries considered intervention, French intellectual Bernard-Henri Lévy engaged with the National Transitional Council, NTC, in Benghazi. Lévy facilitated a meeting between the NTC leaders and Sarkozy in Paris. Following their discussions, Sarkozy publicly recognized the NTC as the official representatives of the Libyan people. Subsequently, feeling betrayed by Sarkozy and in a fit of anger, Gaddafi ordered the deployment of the military to quell rebel enclaves, an action that prompted decisive Western intervention. Sarkozy, along with UK Prime Minister David Cameron and American Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, successfully rallied their nations and garnered support from the international community. United Nations Resolution 1973, adopted on March 11, 2011, and backed by the Arab League and neighboring states, authorized, quote, "all necessary measures to protect civilians, stopping short of foreign occupation." On March 19th, the coalition, led by France, the UK, and the United States, initiated airstrikes. NATO later assumed control of the operation, marking the first official responsibility to protect action. French military involvement was vital, launching airstrikes against Gaddafi's military infrastructure and helping establish the no-fly zone, neutralizing the Libyan Air Force threat. France's strategic assets enforced the UN-mandated arms embargo. Operation Unified Protector lasted approximately 8 months, resulting in the ousting of Gaddafi and ultimately leading to his death. Following the violent demise of Gaddafi and his government, Sarkozy embarked on his third trip to Libya. In the capital, he declared the success of the intervention, offering congratulations to the Libyan people. He conveyed to the world that in the 21st century, quote, "there will not be one place for dictators where they can remain certain of their impunity." However, this did not mark the end of the instability. This intervention marked the beginning of an ongoing conflict that persists to this day and has left the Libyan state without unified leadership for more than 10 years. While it seemed that the French government's involvement in overthrowing and causing the death of Gaddafi ended his relationship with Sarkozy, an underlying connection soon came to light. On March 16, 2011, shortly after the French-led UN resolution to take, quote, "all necessary measures to stop the Libyan government from attacking its citizens," Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, made a startling claim in an interview with Euronews. He alleged that Libya had funded Nicolas Sarkozy's 2007 presidential campaign, stating, quote, "Firstly, Sarkozy must repay Libya the money he took for his election campaign. We financed his election campaign, and we have all the details and are ready to publish them. The first thing we ask of this clown Sarkozy is that he repay this money to the Libyan people. We helped him become president so that he would help the Libyan people, but he has disappointed us. And very soon, we will publish all the details and the documents and the banking payslips." While these allegations may have seemed to come from a place of anger and distress, given that Gaddafi's government was days away from attack, they hinted at deeper truths. And as the saying goes, where there's smoke, there's fire. In May 2012, the French investigative news website Mediapart published documents suggesting that ex-Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi had approved a €50 million contribution to Nicolas Sarkozy's 2007 presidential campaign. Mediapart reported that former Libyan Prime Minister al-Baghdadi al-Mahmoudi confirmed the contribution, backed by an official document signed by Libya's foreign intelligence head, Moussa Koussa. The document outlined the agreement to, quote, "support the electoral campaign of Sarkozy and specified the €50 million amount, noting a prior meeting with Sarkozy ally reshaped regarding payment details. Following these revelations, French authorities launched a formal investigation led by financial investigators and examining magistrates. The investigation aimed to verify the document's authenticity, trace the fund source, and assess Sarkozy's involvement, focusing on whether the funding violated French campaign finance laws and linked directly to Sarkozy's electoral activities. Nicolas Sarkozy vehemently denied any wrongdoing and dismissed the allegations as politically motivated and lacking in evidence. He portrayed the accusations as an attempt to tarnish his reputation. In response to the publication of the document, he filed an official complaint against Mediapart for forgery and use of forgery, handling and receiving forgeries, and the publication of false information. In April 2013, the Paris Prosecutor's Office opened a general investigation for corruption, influence peddling, forgery, and misuse of public funds over the allegations regarding the alleged funding of Sarkozy's campaign by the Gaddafi regime. The allegations and investigation had significant political consequences for Sarkozy, who, having lost the 2012 presidential election, faced legal challenges due to the fallout of a scandal from the 1990s that was coming back to light, the Karachi Affair. In the 1990s, France sold Augusta-class submarines to Pakistan, a deal mired in controversy over millions in illicit commissions paid to intermediaries. The controversy later became known as the Augusta Scandal or Karachi Affair, a far-reaching political scandal that owes its name to the murders in 2002 of 11 French naval engineers who were helping build one of 3 Augusta submarines in Karachi, Pakistan. French media reported that Ziad Takieddine, the Lebanese-French contractor who introduced Sarkozy to Gaddafi, received millions in commissions and paid off lobbying firms in Pakistan and France. In 2011, French courts opened an investigation into Takieddine, investigating if the funds were used to finance the presidential campaign of then Prime Minister Edouard Balladur in 1995. How does this involve Sarkozy? Nicolas Sarkozy served as Balladur's budget minister in 1994. Witnesses alleged that Sarkozy authorized financial arrangements for payment intermediaries, including Takieddine. Takieddine and others organized the transfer of secret cash sums from a Swiss bank account to Paris during the submarine deal. Takieddine continued to act as a commission-paid intermediary for Sarkozy's staff in various weapons sales starting in 2002, even after Balladur's failed presidential election bid in 1995. Shortly after the inquiry into Sarkozy's alleged campaign funding by the Gaddafi regime began, the French satirical weekly Le Canard Enchaîné revealed an undisclosed €500,000 transfer to Claude Guéant, a close associate of Sarkozy, from a company owned by a Malaysian lawyer in March 2008. Guéant claimed the funds were payment for 2 17th century Dutch paintings, but Le Monde noted that the paintings had previously been traded for a much lower amount. Investigators linked the transaction to a banker associated with Bachir Saleh, a key financial figure for Gaddafi, and French businessman Alexandre Jury, suspected of being an intermediary between Libya and Sarkozy's team. Mediapart disclosed that French special forces evacuated Saleh, the head of the Libyan investment portfolio, from Libya to Tunisia. After Gaddafi's overthrow, Jury flew Saleh from Tunis to Paris on a private jet. Saleh lived in France for about a year and met with Bernard Scarsini, the head of France's secret services, despite being under an Interpol arrest warrant. A 2012 photograph even revealed Saleh walking freely in Paris despite the outstanding arrest warrant, leading to his eventual departure from the city. Later, the judicial investigation revealed that Saleh held the most comprehensive records of French funding within the Gaddafi regime. There are suspicions that he exchanged these records for French assistance in escaping the conflict's turmoil. Additional revelations from Mediapart showed that Ziad Takieddine acted as a key intermediary for Sarkozy's closest aides in negotiating lucrative military and security contracts with Gaddafi's government. This collaboration began in 2005 and continued after Sarkozy became president in 2007. Confidential documents revealed Takieddine's close work with Claude Guéant, Sarkozy's longtime chief of staff, principal private secretary, and former campaign director. The document highlighted the deals involving weapon sales and military contracts, and also suggested a cordial relationship between Sarkozy's team and the Gaddafi regime. The documents detail Takieddine's involvement in negotiations with Libya from 2005 to 2007, covering various arms deals such as border protection systems, surveillance systems, military equipment, and other security contracts. Takieddine acted as a key intermediary in these secret negotiations, frequently communicating with Claude Guéant. The documents also reveal Takieddine's role of facilitating the release of the Bulgarian nurses from Libyan detention. Sarkozy and his associates vehemently denied the allegations, claiming the documents were forgeries intended to tarnish Sarkozy's reputation. The release of these documents significantly impacted the judicial investigation initiated in 2013. French authorities continued to scrutinize the evidence presented by Mediapart to corroborate claims and establish a legal basis for potential charges of illicit campaign financing. Throughout the years, many individuals have spoken about the Gaddafi-Sarkozy relationship. A doctor close to Takieddine testified that Ziad claimed to have given money to Sarkozy's team on behalf of the Libyan government. Several former Libyan officials also alleged financing for Sarkozy. Investigating magistrates reportedly obtained diaries belonging to Shukri Ghanem, Gaddafi's oil minister, documenting 3 payments in April 2007. Notably, Ghanem was found drowned in the Danube River in Vienna in 2012. Later that year, the late American ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens, emailed Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, stating, quote, "Not one Libyan I've spoken to believes he flung himself in the Danube. Most believe he was silenced by regime members or foreign mafia types." In a bombshell revelation, Ziad Takieddine stated in a recorded 2016 interview that he personally handed 3 suitcases containing a total of 5 million euros from the Libyan government to French Interior Minister Nicolas Sarkozy and his Chief of Staff Claude Guéant in late 2006 and early 2007. In this interview, Takieddine stated that the suitcases of money were given to him in Tripoli by Libyan spy chief Abdullah al-Senussi, who was also Gaddafi's brother-in-law. Takieddine confirmed that he acted as an intermediary between Sarkozy and Gaddafi, facilitating their meeting in 2005 and handling various security and oil contracts. He also provided details of the 3 trips he made between Paris and Tripoli from November 2006 to January 2007, delivering money in a suitcase to Guéant and Sarkozy. The first trip, he delivered around 1.5 million euros, the second trip, an estimated 2 million euros, and the third trip, he delivered approximately 1.5 million euros. Takieddine states that he carried a total of 5 million euros for exchanges of services and reported back to Senussi after each handover. Sarkozy's chief of staff Claude Guéant and Sarkozy himself allegedly knew about the cash deliveries, and Takieddine describes the circumstances of handing over the money in Guéant's office and Sarkozy's private apartment. Lastly, Takieddine, who once considered Sarkozy a champion, criticized him for, quote, the bloodbath and war unleashed in Libya after France's intervention in 2011. Sarkozy and Guéant vehemently denied the allegations. In April 2017, French anti-corruption authorities reported unusually high cash flow among staff in Sarkozy's 2007 campaign. The campaign's treasurer claimed the euro bills came from anonymous donations, but other witnesses, including the staffer who opened campaign mail, contradicted this explanation. In January 2018, French businessman Alexandre Jury was arrested in London on a European arrest warrant for fraud and money laundering. In March 2018, Nicolas Sarkozy was detained for questioning and later charged with passive corruption, benefiting from embezzled public funds, and illegal campaign financing. In an unrelated case in 2021, Sarkozy was sentenced to a year of house arrest for illegal campaign financing in his failed 2012 re-election bid. Additionally, he was found guilty of corruption and influence peddling in another case and was sentenced to house arrest in May 2023, but this sentence is suspended pending review by France's highest court. In April 2025, Sarkozy, along with 12 co-defendants, stood trial for active and passive corruption, concealment of embezzlement of public funds, influence peddling, illegal financing of the campaign, and misuse of company assets, and membership in a criminal conspiracy related to the illicit Libyan campaign financing. Notable figures who joined him as co-defendants include his former right-hand man, Claude Guéant, and former minister, Brice Hortefeux. On September 25, 2025, a Paris court delivered a landmark ruling against former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison after being found guilty of criminal association, in which prosecutors said Sarkozy's campaign received funding from Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi in exchange for diplomatic favors. Sarkozy was cleared of 3 other charges, including passive corruption, illegal campaign financing, and concealing the embezzlement of public funds. Former ministers Claude Guéant and Brice Hortefeux, 2 of his closest associates during his presidency, were also convicted of criminal association, though they too were acquitted of several other allegations. The judgment marked a historic first. No former president in modern French history had ever received an actual prison sentence. In a significant turn, the court ruled that the 70-year-old Sarkozy would be incarcerated immediately, despite his stated intent to appeal. Following the verdict, Sarkozy addressed the French public, maintaining his innocence and condemning the ruling as a miscarriage of justice, stating, quote, "If they absolutely want me to sleep in prison, I will sleep in prison. But with my head held high, I'm innocent. This injustice is a scandal. I ask the French people, whether they voted for me or not, to grasp what has just happened. Hatred truly knows no bounds." The intricate and paradoxical relationship between Nicolas Sarkozy and Muammar Gaddafi unveils a striking hypocrisy at the heart of international politics. Sarkozy, a vocal critic of Libya's human rights abuses and democratic deficiencies, was simultaneously entangled in a clandestine financial relationship with Gaddafi's government. This duality highlights a disturbing facet of global politics, where proclaimed values often clash with covert actions motivated by personal and political gain. The relationship between Gaddafi and Sarkozy matters because it forces us to question the ideals we hold dear. It prompts us to think about the ethical foundations of our political systems, urging a critical examination of the relationship between power, diplomacy, and democracy. This saga serves as a reminder that between every political alliance lies a story worth understanding, shaping not only the course of countries, but our collective belief in the integrity of the systems that govern us. The alleged illicit funding of Sarkozy's 2007 presidential campaign by Gaddafi underscores the pervasive nature of corruption. It serves as a poignant reminder that corruption is not confined to autocratic regimes, but also permeates democratic societies, undermining their moral authority and the principles they profess to uphold. The lack of accountability and consequence for such actions perpetuates a cycle of impunity, eroding public trust in political institutions and leaders. Moreover, the fallout from this duplicitous relationship had devastating repercussions for Libya and its people. Sarkozy, who once benefited from Gaddafi's largesse, became a leading advocate for NATO's intervention in Libya under the guise of humanitarianism. However, there were deeper interests at play. In 2011, Libération published a letter from Libya's National Transitional Council promising to allocate 35% of the country's crude oil to France in gratitude for its support. While Sarkozy initially disputed these allegations, they gained further credibility in 2016 when WikiLeaks published emails from Hillary Clinton's private server. Sidney Blumenthal, a close confidant and advisor to the Clintons with ties to Libya in the 2000s, informed Hillary Clinton in the spring of 2011 through a memo titled, quote, "How the French Created the National Libyan Council, où l'argent parle," meaning money talks in French. The memo revealed that French intelligence had covertly supported Libyan opposition figures, promising to recognize the council as Libya's new government in return for favors, especially in the oil industry. Subsequent memos from Blumenthal indicated that French intelligence had met with key Libyan figures to secure French dominance in Libya's oil sector. This was a major influence on President Nicolas Sarkozy's decision to attack Libya. Sarkozy's motivations included 1. Gaining a greater share of Libya's oil production, 2. Increasing French influence in North Africa, 3. Improving his political situation in France, 4. Reasserting the French military's global position, and 5. Addressing concerns about Gaddafi's plans to supplant France in Francophone Africa. The intervention, which played a significant role in toppling Gaddafi, plunged Libya into chaos, leaving it a fractured state still grappling with instability and violence to this day. The world, largely unaware of the prior covert connections between Sarkozy and Gaddafi, as well as Sarkozy's political and economic motivations, witnessed a humanitarian disaster justified by rhetoric that masked deep-seated hypocrisies. This saga serves as a stark illustration of the far-reaching consequences of political duplicity. It calls for critical examination of the ethical dimensions of international relations and a renewed commitment to transparency and accountability. Only by confronting these uncomfortable truths can we hope to mitigate the corrosive effects of corruption and prevent the recurrence of such tragedies in the future.